Thought Leadership Series, which is brought to you in partnership with Baird. I am Lisa Zangari, a Vice President here at the Leadership Louisville Center, and our goal with this series has always been to bring you thought-provoking speakers and timely topics that inspire and enable personal growth, business connections, deeper personal connections, and hands-on community engagement so that we can all be better and do better. That is our purpose here at the center. And this series is core to what we do because we believe in growing. We believe that growing our confidence, our connections, and our knowledge can be a force for good in our workplaces, in our community, and even the broader world. And right now in our community and actually our nation and around the globe, we are collectively facing an incredibly unique and challenging time. And people are seeking a deeper dive into topics that they already know quite a lot about, but I think perhaps even more so, are seeking greater understanding and greater awareness of the topics that we don't know so well. And this morning's topic is no difference. Liberty and food justice for all. This will be a panel discussion on food injustice, but I think even more importantly, the solutions that these four innovative and entrepreneurial women are bringing to us. Now, before we go any further, I am going to turn it over to Jim Allen, and those of you that are regulars at our Thought Leadership Series will know Jim well. He is Vice Chairman of Baird, but even more so, he also is a community partner. He spends quite a lot of time giving back in this community. So Jim, I would like to turn it over to you. Are we able to unmute Jim?
There we go. There we go. I was trying to get your attention. Thank you. Good morning, everybody. It's really great to be here. And we are such big believers in Leadership Louisville and all that they do for our community. A great convener of thought leadership and bring to bear a lot of resources around really important issues and things that are really critical to the community. Today's topic is no different. And so again, we're pleased and proud to be supporters of Leadership Louisville and the Thought Leadership series in particular. Today's panel will be moderated by Karan Chavis, who joined the University of Louisville School of Medicine in 2014 as Chief of Staff. She serves as Operations Planning and Policy Advisor to the Dean and leads a School of Medicine staff development initiative entitled SMART, which is the School of Medicine Advancement, Retention, and Training, and does that for the staff. Chavis is a graduate of Texas A&M University with more than 36 years of university experience. At the University of Louisville, Chavis serves on several committees and is chair of CADRE, I think I've got that right, Commission on Diversity and Racial Equality. As chair of CADRE, as the CADRE staff, she addresses staff. She chairs the CADRE Staff Concerns Committee and serves on the Benefits Design Workshop, Work Group, Human Resources Advisory Committee, and Campus Environment Team. Karyn will moderate today's conversation with panelists Megan Bell, Cassia Herron, Shauntrice Martin, and Karen Moskowitz. So please join me in welcoming Karan Chavis and the panelists. We look forward to an enlightening and very interesting conversation. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Good morning. We are excited to come to you today with this wonderful thought leadership series on liberty and food justice for all. We are going to start our efforts today with a short poll for our audience. And so what we want you to do is to look at these questions and tell us which ones you think are true. So just use your computers and answer the questions that you believe are true, indicate which ones you believe are true, and then we'll get to see sort of what the thinking is around this issue with our audience today. So we have a spread, it looks like around 64%, 65% believe that we have a high prevalence of convenience stores. And when you do have that, that's associated with a high infant mortality rate. We've got about 75% that believe that Kentucky ranked 5th in the country for highest rates of food insecurity in 2019. And about 88% believe that the mere presence of a supermarket in communities correlates with lower rates of obesity and better health. And what we want you to know is that all of the statements that are posted in the poll are true statements. And that brings us to the topic that we are exploring today, and that is liberty and food justice for all. You know, our food systems play a major role in determining our health and well-being. Not all of our residents have equal food access. Today, we're going to hear from a fabulous panel of innovators that are cultivating food justice in West Louisville. We're going to start by introducing our panelists. I'm delighted to have with us today Cassia Herron from the Louisville Community Grocery, Megan Bell, founder and co-owner of the Next Door Market, Karyn Moskowitz, a Bingham Fellows graduate, class of 2013, who is the founder and executive director of New Roots Fresh Stop Markets, and Shauntrice Martin, who is with Feed the West as their director, and she is the owner of Black Market. Welcome, ladies, and thank you for being with us today. We're going to start with a couple of questions that we'd like to have our panelists respond to, and we'll just roll right into those questions. I'd like to begin with each of you sharing your elevator pitch for the solutions you're leading to spread food justice in West Louisville. What is the specific pain point that your solution addresses? And I'd like to go in this order. If we can start with you, Cassia, and then we'll hear from Karyn and then Shauntrice, and we'll close on this question with Megan. Cassia?
Good morning. I'm a proud Kentuckian. I grew up in Richmond, Kentucky, and found myself a resident of Louisville when I came to attend the University of Louisville. Next slide. How many of you all know Ivor? He cooks or used to cook omelets at the Bardstown Road Market. He also was co-owner and may still be co-owner of the Harvest Restaurant on East Market. Funny thing, before Ivor and I knew each other, became comrades in enhancing our local food system, Ivor was my creative writing instructor at the university when I was a sophomore there. And when I graduated from the university and decided that I didn't want to teach middle school math and English, I reconnected with Ivor. Next slide. Ivor was the board chair of Community Farm Alliance. I came on as a community organizer to work with he and residents in the neighborhood who wanted a market there. Ivor was selling his products to a couple of women, Rita Clayton and Lita Goodrich, who were owners of a restaurant over on Eastern Parkway, and they lived in the Portland neighborhood. And they said, look, Ivor, we're getting this great food for our restaurant. Why can't we get that in our neighborhood? And so that was the start of the Portland neighborhood, the Portland Farmers Market. A week after that market opened, I got a call from Miss Ella Roberts over in the Shelley Park neighborhood, who is no longer with us. And she said, hey, if Portland can have a farmer's market, so can we come over here and find out what's going on with our neighborhood. And so I went over and met with her. And the following season, we opened a market in the Mazik neighborhood, at the Mazik parking lot in the Silktown neighborhood. In 2 years, next slide, that work really was around building relationships and cooperation around people of difference across geography, across race and socioeconomic status, all around expanding food access and creating markets for local and regional products. Values of cooperation and equity have always been a part of this work. And we have been adamant that we can expand food access and provide parity for small farmers and regional farmers in our state. And that's what we've continued to do. Next slide. So the work of the farmers markets was an opportunity for us to collect data and collect stories from people who've been living in these neighborhoods and knew that that access was different. They just didn't know how different access was. So we did a community food assessment and learned about the difference between how people access food in West Louisville and downtown and across the city. And we published this map in 2016 to show that residents across the state had, or across the county, 12,000, a little over 12,000 residents per grocery store. In West Louisville, it's 25,000 residents per grocery store. Next slide. And 10 years later, this has not gotten any better. It's gotten worse. This is a map from 2017 from the Center for Health Equity. And if you kind of look a little closer, the downtown has hollowed out. There are less grocery stores that serve the central business district and neighborhoods that surround downtown. And so my friends and I decided we're going to do something about it. Next slide. In 2016, we decided to get together. We sat in each other's kitchens and across our dinner tables and met for a year to learn about cooperative economics, not only just cooperative economics, but cooperative grocery stores, and then cooperative grocery stores that are located in urban neighborhoods. And what we found is that we are a small group of a budding group of folks across the country who are using cooperative economics to solve this problem of food access and building new markets. We incorporated our nonprofit in 2017, the Louisville Association for Community Economics, because we pretty quickly became our own technical assistance providers and local experts in cooperative development and grocery store development. We have been engaging the community since then. We incorporated the grocery store last year as the Louisville Community Grocery. Shares are $150. People can develop payment plans to pay that share. We're encouraging folks who have more than $150 who want to buy another share to buy a community share for $125 that would offset a low-income share of $25 for low-income seniors and young people. This is an investment opportunity for folks across the community, no matter from which seat you sit, whether you're a philanthropist, a banker, head of a CDC, head of a nonprofit. There's a way for us to work together to get this grocery store built so that we can model the sort of business and cooperation that our community deserves. I look forward to engaging with you later. Thanks.
Karen Moskowitz.
Good morning. This is perfect timing because I am the community organizer who picked up the position at Community Farm Alliance after Cassia went back to school. So our work at New Roots actually jumped off of work with Community Farm Alliance and was very inspired by my time having to access most of my food while a resident of Southern Indiana from food pantries. And it was very difficult in the thick of things to even make the connection to some of the illnesses and sickness I was experiencing and the lack of fresh food in my own life. But as I moved into Louisville, I ended up in the Portland neighborhood. And that is when I started to realize and understand about the unequal access in our city between some neighborhoods in the East End that are able to access fresh, local, organic produce, and whereas living in the Portland neighborhood, it was very difficult for us. I had a car, so I was able to get out of the neighborhood and cross the bridge into New Albany to get really good fresh produce, and but a lot of my neighbors couldn't. And we spent a lot of time in the West Louisville trying to organize farmers markets. So there was one in the California neighborhood and also in East Downtown. And it was very difficult to get farmers to either come and set up the markets, or the farmers that came found it very difficult to make a living. And so this is when we started to look for different models. And the vision of cooperative economics, which came out of another organization in the Cleveland area called City Fresh. We sent some of our Community Farm Alliance leaders up there, and they came back and said, you know what, we know that our farmers are going to want to sell their produce to people who are struggling to afford it, but they have to get their retail prices and make a living. But if families can pool their resources based on an economic sliding scale, then everybody can participate because we have big buying power and we are able to negotiate wholesale prices. So that's how New Roots was born. This is our 11th growing season, and our mission is to ignite community power for fresh food access. Next slide. So why does New Roots focus exclusively on fresh produce? These statistics are what keeps me up at night. And these are not just statistics, these are my friends, these are your neighbors. And you can see that these are the results of not having access to fresh produce on a consistent basis. Next slide. So the way the Fresh Stop Market model works is that we organize in communities that are experiencing food apartheid. This means that they do not have easy access to fresh fruits and vegetables. By pooling resources on an income-based sliding scale, so if you are of limited wealth and you're on food stamps, you pay less than someone who makes more money. We pool all that money, and like I said, then we're able to get wholesale prices from farmers. We do automatic payments so that for the entire growing season, which in Kentucky starts with strawberries in May and ends with greens in October, and pop up Fresh Stop markets in 8 different neighborhoods across the city. Our shareholders, who are our customers, pay 2 weeks ahead of time so that the money is pooled in the bank and we're able to tell the farmer exactly what to bring. So there's no waste and there's no risk. And even better, we're able to forecast with Kentucky farmers in the winter, so they're actually growing the food just for us. And if we didn't do that, we wouldn't have any food. And it's been an amazing process because over 11 years, we've never missed the mark. We've always forecasted and always made it happen, that we have the shareholders who buy our farmers beautiful food. So we pool all that money, and then we're able to tell the farmer exactly what we need. They drop off the food 2 hours before the market, and we actually pop up a market. So we leverage different sites, churches, businesses around the city. So we don't have bricks and mortar, which makes the model very efficient. So we don't have to pay rent. And the market is popped up. The volunteers, who are all shareholders, come and help pop up the market. And then the shareholders pick up their beautiful bags. Now, in previous years before COVID, we were able to set out the food. It actually looked like a farmer's market, but shareholders put their shares together. This year, because of COVID, we actually have to pre-pack the bags. And so the families come pick up their vegetables, and then the next day the money is deposited in the farmer's account. So they're paid immediately. And this is very unusual for wholesale accounts for farmers, where they really struggle sometimes to even get paid within 90 days. You know, we pay them right away. And we also focus a lot on sharing knowledge on how to prepare fruits and vegetables. And in previous years, we had a chef at every one of our pop-ups doing a cooking demo. This year, it's not been possible, so we moved to video. And all of our recipes are vegan and kosher and halal, so we're very inclusive of all our shareholders. Next slide. I want to show you some very beautiful photos of our vegetables, our purple okra and our lettuce, so you can get an idea of how beautiful Kentucky food is, and how actually, you know, once you get used to eating local organic produce, is very difficult to go back. And what we focus on are the 2 pain points of affordability and also location. And it's a very volunteer-driven movement. We had filled just this season so far 900 volunteer slots. They are all shareholders having skin in the game, not only with paying for their produce, but also volunteering their time. And to give you an idea, this share in front of me is a typical share in August, costs $6 if you're on SNAP benefits. So 75% of our shareholders identify as having limited wealth. The other 25% are higher income families who also pool their money, so we have enough money to be able to pay what the farmers ask us to pay for the food. We also are very proud of the fact, next slide, that we are able to help small family farms. We love our farmers, and they love the fact that they could build food justice into their business plan. So here you see Ben Abel on the left from Rootbound Farm, our 22-acre vegetable farm that provides about 90% of our food. And on the right, Valley Spirit, a 2-acre vegetable farm, and also we work with Bar Farm. So these 3 farmers have been feeding literally thousands of people since May, this beautiful organic food. And I do want to close with some of our pain points, which is we don't really have a great, healthy food culture in Kentucky. And this is something I'm very passionate about changing. Only 7% of Kentuckians eat vegetables and fruit. And so it's like we're pushing a big boulder up the hill, you know, to consistently incorporate these vegetables into every meal. After all, if we have to eat half of our plates of fruits and vegetables and we don't have access to it, then we're going to experience the chronic illness we talked about before. And what would be really incredible, and what we're looking forward to working on over the next 5, 10, 20 years, is having that support from the healthcare community, especially businesses who want to help their employees get healthy, to be able to join us in creating a food culture that is healthy and happy and is revolving around eating fresh, local, organic produce. Thank you.
All right. Good morning, everybody. I'm Shauntrice. I'm director of Feed the West and owner of Black Market, as Karen mentioned. So I'm going to start out with something positive because food injustice is, you know, it's a downhill. There's a lot of really negative things we hear about the West End, but I want to start off with something positive. I created Feed the West along with Taylor Ryan, who's the executive director of Change Today, Change Tomorrow. To date, this slide is now out of date. To date, as of today, we have served 22,000 residents in the West End. Many of you know that there are 61,000, a little over 61,000 residents in the West End, and we're very proud to have served so many. This food justice program has only existed for a few months. It was created in response to police brutality and the food apartheid. So we've been able to partner with so many organizations. We have lots of community members who trust us to come into their homes in a COVID-safe way and bring them fresh food, bring them diapers, bring things for the elders we have, and it has been amazing to see. We have some of the best volunteers. So I just want to start there because it's not that our community is looking for handouts. We are looking for access. And so through Feed the West, through Black Market, we are excited to be part of the pipeline to better access to fresh food. Cassia talked earlier about the health indicators. And in our community in the West End, we tend to live 10 to 15 years shorter on average than folks who are in more affluent communities in the East End. Our homes are appraised for less here in the West End. I'm a homeowner myself. I want to be able to pass wealth on to my son, but my home is not going to go for the same amount as a home in the West End. We could have the same square footage, the same number of bedrooms. We could both have a skylight. It doesn't matter because being in a Black neighborhood means that it is appraised for less. And that's related to food justice because part of the reason we don't have higher appraisals on our homes is because we don't have meaningful things like a full service grocery. In the West End, for every 25,000 residents, we have one full service grocery store. In the East End, they have one full service grocery store for about every 12,000 residents. You can go to the next slide. So let's talk about a food apartheid. A lot of people say food desert, but the reason why we specifically focus on food apartheid as a language is because food desert just relates to a specific geography. It says that in this community, there is a lack of food or a lack of access. There are people who are poor, and it focuses on people's choices, the choices of individuals. Alternatively, when we talk about a food apartheid, that is about the entire system of institutional racism, the system of white supremacy that forces us into limited choices. When we started the Bok Choy project a couple months ago, we just wanted to look at what is the issue? What are the root causes of these food insecurity issues? And so when we look, we see that in certain communities and certain zip codes, if the Black population is higher, the police presence is higher, and the offering of organic produce is lower. And of course, when we look in the East End, we look in affluent communities, they have more choices for healthy food. They have more choices when it comes to what types of services that the communities offer. The Health Equity Report was one of the foundations for a lot of our work, and Black babies have less of a chance of surviving. Black families have more of a chance of having asthma and things like that. We all heard of Rubber Town, right? These things are prevalent in our communities, and the solutions are often not community-based. So when I hear Karan talk, when I hear Cassia talk, I get excited because their solutions are community-based. Karan was in Portland, a resident who saw a need. Cassia has been in the community, has been doing this research, and is probably one of the most well-researched academics when it comes to food justice in Kentucky. So I get excited about that because they focus on the very same thing we do. And I've said this to multiple people. It is going to take not just one Cassia, one Megan, one Shauntrice. It's going to take all of us creating these systems so that we can all have longevity. We've been working on some research with what happened to places like Walnut Street, right? What happened to the Black-owned grocery stores, the convenience stores that used to exist, that used to keep our communities thriving? And many of them went away because of loans, because of gentrification, because of institutional racism, capitalism. And so in order for us to all survive and thrive, we want to work together. Next slide, please. All right, so again, I'm not going to harp too much on all the statistics, but in just looking at the pictures that you see there in the West End, specifically in the Russell neighborhood, there is not only a lack of access, but the access that we do have does not afford us the opportunity to have fresh fruits and vegetables. That is absolutely imperative because while we have food injustice in Louisville, there are also Black farmers around Kentucky who are cut off from many of the wealth building opportunities. They're not able to get into large grocery stores. They don't have a social media presence. Their job and their passion is farming, but it means that they are not able to get the same opportunities as many of their counterparts who are white, who are affluent. And so one thing we do at Black Market is make sure that we're sourcing to Black farmers. Places like Black Soil, Kentucky Greens, Cleve Family Market, Barber Farms. There are so many Black farmers. We went a few weeks ago out to Danville for the first time for the Miller Farm. Husband and wife, their produce is amazing. They were the only people who had green tomatoes, and just talking to them about their experience, you can tell they're passionate. Their produce is beautiful, and we want to connect young people in the West End to people like the Millers in Danville. For me, that was my first time going to Danville, and I'll tell you what, I was not ready. It's different, right? But there are parts of Kentucky that many of us in the West End don't even know exist. We don't even have a frame of mind for like how far away it is or what it looks like there or what it means to dig your hands in dirt. So at Black Market, we are focused on bringing that agricultural education here to Louisville, specifically to the West End. We're starting with Russell, but as Cassia and Megan open their grocery stores and thrive, and Megan has already started with the mobile grocery, we are working as a collaborative because part of the failure in the past was us being in silos. So I'm absolutely excited to be part of a collective that cares about food justice. And there's Parkland as well. Parkland Food Mart, which is in my new neighborhood, is also thriving. So there are a bunch of Black women, there are a bunch of women and people of color who are creating better pathways to food access, and I'm happy to be part of that. And then I'll say in closing, the last thing is this Saturday we have a Black Up, which is just a Black pop-up. If you haven't noticed already, I'm going to put Black in front of everything we do. And I want everyone who has something in the West End that you want to sell, even if you don't have a logo, website, none of that matters. If you have an idea, you have a service, a product, just come out and see us. We want you to thrive. The other part of our, I won't say failures, but our shortcomings in the West End is we have businesses, they have great ideas, great products, but they don't have the support. So we want to be that support system. We want to be a pipeline for success. And yeah. That's it. Thank you.
Megan?
Oh, okay. Hey everyone, my name is Megan Bell. I am the owner and founder of the Next Door Market. How it all started with the grocery store deal was I had read an article about Save a Lot that was closing, and I looked at my husband, and I grew up in Newburgh, so same familiar environment, not having an accessible resources, not having an accessible grocery store that has healthier options and different things like that. So I was reading an article about Save a Lot that was closing in West Louisville. And I looked at my husband and I just said, you know, I'm going to open a grocery store. I said it just like that. So what I did was for 3 years, I studied about food insecurity. I studied about poverty, even though that's the type of neighborhood that I grew up in. It was the norm for me. I didn't really know anything different until I had moved out of my community, went to college and different things like that, and really started studying what was happening. And when I came back, I realized that this was a problem, a huge gap that was happening, not having resources, healthier options for grocery stores, different things like that. So I started studying food insecurity. I started reaching out to people like Cassia and Karyn, Miss Karyn, being very inspired by their model as far as understanding what food security is and how I could do my grocery store. So what I did was sorry guys, I networked, went out, talked to Miss Karyn, talked to Cassia about what I wanted to do. I had an idea about what I wanted to do with my grocery store, but I really didn't know how to really go about it. So I really started studying mobile grocery stores that's really popular in the West Coast. And I ended up starting my own mobile grocery store called the Next Door Market Mobile Grocery Store and Fresh Meals. And what we do is we go out into communities that have lack of accessible fresh foods, and we deliver. So they go on our online store and they order. We have all types of products. We have vegan, gluten-free. We have just all types of stuff that we have on our on our website. And we go on there and they go on there, they order, and then we deliver. We also do like different pop-up markets in West Louisville. We're working with some partners, some foundations, Rondo Foundation. We work with Until Freedom. They did a farmer's market. We work with them. So we do pop-up markets, we do deliveries, and we also have shipments that we do for people who can't do drop-offs, can't do deliveries. We ship some of their products too.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing information about all of the initiatives that you're working on. I'd like to pose this next question to all of the panelists. If you could change one thing in West Louisville to decrease food insecurity, what would that one thing be? Start with you, Cassia.
I think I would change how people get access to resources. It can't be said enough. I was inspired to become a planner, or discovered the discipline of urban planning literally by driving the streets in West Louisville and East Downtown. I would see these corner buildings where you could tell there was some sort of commercial or some sort of activity. These buildings and streets had these bones that you could just feel the spirits of commercial activity. And a lot of people would start asking me as a community organizer, why can't I get access to this property? What does it mean for the property to be land banked? I had no clue. I didn't know either. And so I started studying and researching and learned a lot about that. And so now today, we still have a lot of people who have dreams and ideas don't have access to the resources to to see those dreams and ideas come to reality. And so I would just say people just having access to the things that they want to do to rebuild their communities.
Thank you. Karyn, Moskowitz?
Yeah, so the underlying tension is really all about lack of a living wage. You know, so if we had a living wage in Louisville, we would be able to afford to buy fresh food. I mean, right now, as I mentioned, you know, it's just so much more expensive than processed and fast food. And I would just really also love to see more fresh food from farmers all over West Louisville, all over Louisville. This I think would be a great return on investment. You know, the health problems, the chronic health problems we're experiencing because we're not able to access fresh food is not only debilitating and painful for the individual, but it's also very expensive for our community. And I would also like our local government, our state government to really be on board with local fresh food and healthy food access. Like, wouldn't it be amazing if we had an Office of Food Justice locally, like some of our other cities, so we could really focus on this? Because I don't know what is more important to Kentuckians than our health. And if the underlying health problems are associated with lack of fresh food and food insecurity, then this is what we have to focus on.
Great, thank you. Shauntrice.
Hello. So this is going to sound controversial, but I'm going to say it because it's true. The one thing I would like to see, and it will impact, I promise, everything that folks are talking about, is if we defund the police. They have a big budget and we have a big need. Specifically, we talked a little bit about like housing insecurity, food insecurity, all these sorts of things. I guarantee you, if you give me, Megan, and Cassia $190 million, we will make some things happen. And so that's my biggest thing, because there are so many injustices, and, you know, just one small initiative is not going to do it. We have to think big. We have to think from the community first. And the biggest need that we've talked about today so far is lack of resources, money, lack of access. So yeah, that's mine.
Great, thank you. Megan.
What I would like to see is kind of off what Ms. Karan, Cassia, and Shauntrice said. I would love to see more education as far as teaching people how to cook healthier options, cook food. A lot of us buy vegetables and different things like that, and we don't know how to cook them. So providing that education, bringing in better resources as far as health, mental health clinics is what I would really love to see in West Louisville. Another thing would be community gardens and different things like that needs to happen. I would love to see stuff like that in West Louisville, on top of multiple grocery stores that local grocery stores, not big corporations, but people that come from those communities that could know the studies. I think that would be pretty amazing.
Yes, it would be. It's one thing to imagine or envision solutions like those that you've shared with us today, but it's another thing to turn those ideas into action. I want to ask each of you, what inspired you to take the leap what was the tipping point that led you to change your idea into reality?
So I was pursuing a PhD in agricultural economics at the University of Kentucky when the Walmart was being proposed at 18th and Broadway. And I was being called back to my community to engage in that. Some of you know, some of you don't know, I was a part of a group that demanded that Walmart and our city government ensure that Walmart was built to the highest quality that we could. We wanted the best Walmart in the state of Kentucky. And Walmart was proposing a 1990s version of a suburban store in the middle of West Louisville. And we said, no, if you're gonna build a store, you should build it like the Target that's being built in downtown Lexington, or the Walmarts that we have seen in other dense neighborhoods. And I heard from community that were pissed off about that project not being built. I had business owners who said, I don't care if it's green, I don't want to have to go over to Indiana to get the things that I need. And I heard that. I heard it loud and clear. And it made me understand that we needed to put out a vision and create an opportunity for people to see that vision. We didn't have any control over what was going to happen with Walmart, even though we had local officials that was representing us. And this was an opportunity for us by building a cooperative grocery store to champion something that we want. We're always going to have to be tearing down the things that that cause us harm or fight against things that we don't want. But rarely do we have an opportunity to champion the things that we want to see happen. And so a girlfriend of mine gave me this book called Collective Courage, and it was all about the history of cooperative economics and partnering, thinking about the work that New Roots was doing. We said that there's already folks who are using cooperative economics to buy food. Let's make sure that that food is available more than just seasonally, and let's figure out a way to create something that people can champion. And we just started talking to each other and figuring it out.
Great, thank you. Karyn, what was your tipping point?
So my motto has always been to kvetch is human, or to complain is human, but to act is divine. And I had spent 2 years of my life, a lot of the time trying to create farmers market, follow that model in West Louisville and East Downtown. And after 2 years, I had to say that my head hurt from banging my head against the wall, in that it was just not sustainable. And it was breaking my heart to see farmers turn away and go to markets in the Highlands. And it was breaking their hearts to not be able to get the food to the people they wanted to get the food to. And so really, like Cassia just mentioned, cooperative economics is really such an incredible, mind-blowing solution, because right now you can't go into a grocery store and say, hey, I'm making less money than this guy, so let me pay $1 for these tomatoes. And he or she could pay the $4. So, being able to pay what you can afford was really just earth-shattering, concept for me. And everybody having skin in the game also, and seeing the pride, and dignity of being able to pool money to be able to help small family organic farms was pretty incredible. And the other thing is, as we started to organize, we started to realize that there were a lot of people who thought like us, and that was very encouraging, to start to hear people's stories about food access from when they were, small children, and how the vegetable culture in Kentucky was so strong, back then. And so really it's been so positive and encouraging to see everyone, thousands and thousands of people eat their vegetables. And that encourages me, every day to keep going.
Excellent. Shauntrice, what inspired you?
So this has been a long time coming. I grew up in Shepherd Square, and between the Shepherd Square and the West End. And, that was back when we had Winn-Dixie. There were a lot of little corner stores and things like that. And so when I moved away after college and came back and saw that Shepherd Square didn't exist anymore, and also saw that Winn-Dixie was gone and just all these options were gone. And I was living between DC and California. So seeing the options we had for food out there, even in the poorest neighborhoods, versus the food options we had here, that really made me want to jump in head first. And the big tipping point was when I was living in California, deciding whether or not I would move back home and start working on food justice, was actually a LinkedIn message from Cassia about, the work that was being done in Louisville and how I could support. So that was a big thing for me. And just seeing people who looked like me being in charge was really what made me say, okay, I need to do my part. I have been very blessed and very privileged to have access and opportunities. So that, really, I still look back at that LinkedIn message sometimes when I'm trying to hold myself accountable. So that's been a big thing for me, because historically, when the people who are affected by something act, the solutions are usually more sustainable. So that's been big for me.
Excellent. And Megan, what about you?
So it took me to go to a Launch at Louisville entrepreneurship school. I did that, and to try to really figure out how I really wanted to do it. So I went out into the community in the Russell neighborhood in West Louisville, did customer discovery to understand like exactly what they wanted and how I should really go about it, about the next door market. And I was just surprised to learn a lot of what they were saying as far as my surveys were going, about they wanted a grocery store like a Whole Foods, or a Trader Joe's or something like that that had healthier options, that was affordable, basically. And all the health conditions that people were facing in the Russell neighborhood, not having transportation, different things like that. My aunt had passed away this year due to health problems. And, you know, that really motivated me to truly understand why having fresher foods in our community is important, especially in the Black community, because we have a lot of health problems. So that really pushed me to want to do more, really understand, is this something that I really wanted to get myself into and how I can go about it to be successful and sustainable.
Excellent. It's clear from listening to you that there's a lot of cross-pollination and collaboration that goes on. We've got time for one last question. There are people in our audience today who'd like to know how they personally can get involved and how they can contribute to positive change and get engaged in changing the equation around food justice in Louisville. How would you engage them in your work? How would they get involved in each of your enterprises?
So there are a number of ways that people can get involved for our organization. So LACE is a nonprofit. You can become a member of LACE for $30. You can become a share owner into the grocery store for $150. And as I said, we're encouraging people to buy $125 shares to offset low income shares. And you can also donate to LACE. But largely, as Karen said, we need a culture of good food and healthy food in our community. So when you go to the grocery store, and if it's a corporate grocery store, ask them what their produce section looks like in the other side of town. If you live in a neighborhood that doesn't have good access, ask the produce manager and have some conversations with them. When you go to your favorite restaurant, ask them if they're buying any local products. When you drop your kids off at school, let's talk to them about what we're feeding our kids. We need a culture of fresh food and health. We talk a lot about it. We've been branding this city as a health equity city, and it's time for us to put our money in where our mouth is. It's time for us to lace up our shoes and get out and walk. And we have to make health and access to being healthy a lot more. It has to be regular. I mean, when I moved from Shelby Park over here to Wyandotte Park, my health changed because it felt easier to walk in this neighborhood than it did in Shelby Park. Shelby Park has a lot of one-way streets. Some of the sidewalks aren't conducive to walking. Traffic goes really fast when I lived in that neighborhood. The tree canopy over here in Wyandotte is so much more diverse and it's beautiful. It's so much more mature. There are sidewalks and it feels like a neighborhood. And so when you're talking to your Metro Council people, when it's time to look at the budget, let's look at where we are investing resources and are we creating a culture in this community where people have more access to food than we have access to bourbon.
Thank you. Karen, how can people contribute to you?
Yes, wonderful, Cassia. I totally agree. I think it'd be a great lesson to visit different grocery stores around Louisville, and you'll see, as Shauntrice's slide was showing, the stark differences, and this will really, really wake you up. The other thing is, we at New Roots, some of our specific needs is great partnerships with businesses. And we have a wonderful partnership with Facilities Management Services and Heine Brothers Coffee, where they see fresh food as a basic human right, just like we do for their employees, understanding that some of their employees are not paid a living wage yet and need access to fresh food. In fact, surveys of the facilities management FMS employees a few years ago, that was the #1 need of their employees, was lack of access to fresh food and the health problems they were experiencing. So they actually buy shares, they buy bags of veggies and fruit for their employees. We have 65 janitors coming this Friday and every other Friday over their lunch hour to pick up the shares. And in turn, the business has also opened up their courtyard to other members of the Portland neighborhood, and it's become our most fantastic, I love all the markets, so I shouldn't say the most fantastic, but the largest market. Also, obviously, it's as other panelists have mentioned, we need to put our money where our health is. We need to invest in an organization like ours. So every year it's a struggle for us to get the funding we need, even though, like I said, it is a high rate of return on investment. And every grant proposal I write, I have to justify this. I have to explain how is this going to become sustainable financially? Well, even though we are a social enterprise and we do create revenue from our shareholders, if it was profitable for to give food and sell food to families of limited wealth, fresh, local, organic food, the private sector would be doing it. The private sector is not, for the most part, doing it, and that's why the nonprofit sector has had to take this up. But we need the investment to make that happen. And we could also be very happy to invite anybody here to come see a Fresh Stop Market before it's too late in 2020, because the foods for the fresh local food stops rolling at the end of October, and that would be on our website. Just let me know. And let me also put a plug for any help we could have at New Roots with future board members. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Shauntrice.
Hey, so there are so many ways to help, and some of you on this call right now have actually come to volunteer, so thank you. We appreciate that. So between Black Market and Feed the West, we do thousands of deliveries a week. So folks who can, #1, volunteer your time, come to make boxes, come to deliver boxes, or just do door-to-door canvassing to let people know about other free resources. #2, money always. I'm sure none of the ladies on this call would turn down money for their stores. So we want to invite corporations to sponsor events. This Sunday, Trader Joe is sponsoring us giving out 200 bags of groceries. So funding corporate sponsorships are always good. And then the third piece is just to share your expertise. We have some folks who are architects, who are gardeners, who are farmers, who are just sharing their expertise with us, because historically in the West End, we have not had access to these sorts of experts. And just coming down to Black Market, 2313 West Market, coming down and just working in the garden with our young people, working on the building, like teaching us what you know and what you've had the privilege to have access to. Those three things are beautiful, and it helps us to thrive. It helps us to be sustainable. And again, I appreciate folks on this call and folks who are in the community who have already reached out and supported us.
Excellent, thank you. Megan, you'll wrap us up.
Yeah, so how people can hear about us is spreading the word about our mobile grocery store that we deliver all over Kentucky, especially our main priority is West Louisville. We're really trying to get the word out. We know a lot of senior citizens and people who don't have transportation need this type of model to have fresh groceries until our grocery store opens and Shauntrice and Cassia's grocery store opens. This is something that they could truly benefit from with our mobile grocery. So spreading the word and supporting us would be great. I can add in the Next Door Market's website and our social media page as well.
Excellent, thank you. I think that wraps our panelists. Thank you very much for your contributions. Lisa, I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Thank you so much, Karen, and thank you to each of our panelists. There are so many questions in the chat, so I want to turn your attention to that as well for our panelists. I will just ask you one or two here. Sherman has asked, what specific policies, city and state, can be changed for food insecurity in West Louisville? So again, Cassia, we'd start with you if you have thoughts on this.
Yes, so there is a national program that we are benefiting called the Healthy Food Finance. And that federal pot of money was started because people in Philadelphia started resourcing corner stores and bodegas with fresh food. And then they started supporting other grocery store development in the city. The city created a local food or a local healthy fund in the city of Philadelphia. And then that went up to the state. So the state then created a healthy food fund in the state of Philadelphia. And now we have this federal fund. It's not enough money. It's not enough money that the feds are putting into it. But you see how local organizations work really moved up to the federal level. And so we have an opportunity here in Kentucky. We have a very unique opportunity to match, to use the funds that we have for tobacco diversification, agriculture diversification from the tobacco settlement, to really use that money in partnership with folks like us in the city who are really helping to make connections with farmers and residents. So hopefully, Sherman, that gave you some idea of what can happen. And I know that Karyn has a very specific policy issue for her project.
Yes, very quickly, we need to accept WIC and senior nutrition program vouchers at Fresh Stop Markets. This would aid us in reaching a lot of young families, but also older adults. But presently, it's a state and federal policy to not allow Fresh Stop Markets to accept. So that's a policy change I'd love to work on with anybody willing to help.
Shauntrice, anything from you?
Yeah, just stay up to date, register to vote, and pay attention to the legislative session.
Well said. And Megan, we'll end with you.
I'm sorry, what was the question again? I'm sorry. I have kids in the background.
Oh, we get it. Any specific policies, either at the city or state level, that you're aware of that people could assist with influencing change around?
Please register to vote. Get out there and vote and make a change. And I would insist people to really look into this $3.5 million that's supposed to be going to the Louisville Co-op, pushing that effort to making sure that that money is getting granted to them.
Well, thank you, Megan, and thanks to each of you. I do know that there were so many questions in the chat and there were so many resources being shared, so we are going to do our best in the follow-up email that we will send to every single one of you to share the links, share the resources, but we will put the email address of all the women that you heard from today, so you can reach out directly if you so choose. We also will share a recording of today's discussion, so that will be coming to you probably tomorrow. And once again, thank you so much, Karan Chavis, Shauntrice Martin, Megan Bell, Karen Moskowitz, and Cassia Herron for bringing your energy and your wisdom to this conversation. So at the Leadership Louisville Center, we do have a couple things up and coming that I would like to share with you. Number one, we do have in a couple weeks 2 courses coming from the Ken Blanchard companies. We are bringing them back. So we have one that is more for mid to upper level management, which is leading virtually. And I think what is so interesting about this opportunity is the senior consultant from the Ken Blanchard companies that authored this course is actually going to be the one that's teaching it as well. I myself am excited to attend. And later that week, we have for your first-time managers, the first-time manager experience from Ken Blanchard companies that will give them an introduction to situational leadership for those that are familiar. But we also, in addition to our full-length courses, we still are offering our free micro-learning sessions. These were born out of the pandemic and our desire to want to give back and give something that is accessible to all in terms of leadership development. And our next topic is leading with imperfection. And finally, our famous 100 Wise Women events are still happening. We are able to do these virtually, and you do not want to miss October 29th, featuring Judge Erica Lee Williams. So thank you all again. The next Thought Leadership series will actually be Friends from Focus St. Louis. They are the Leadership Louisville Center of St. Louis, and they, again, will be bringing you a thought-provoking and timely topic, public values and political controversy. So with that, thank thank you again. Please expect that email in your inbox from Holly Prather from Leadership Louisville Center. I wish all of you health, happiness, and please do take care. Thank you so much.